and welcome to the Handsell with Ron Hogan and Jennifer Cody Epstein. I'm at Word in Brooklyn, and Jennifer is the author of several books. Her most recent is a novel called The Gods of Heavenly Punishment, and it is a historical novel that covers a wide swatch of territory, America, China, and Japan. It's basically centered around the firebombing of Tokyo.
Right.
During the Second World War, and I'm interested in what drew you to that as a topic.
Well, part of it is that I've lived in Japan. I spent about 5 years there all told, so I've always been very interested in the country and the culture, and in particular in the Pacific War, because it just wasn't something that I really ever had much of a grasp of. And when I learned relatively late that the firebombing of Tokyo in 1945 was just this very uniquely devastating event, about 100,000 people died in about 4 hours. So it was really on par with Hiroshima, at least initially, as the toll went. I was really fascinated that I hadn't heard of it, and most people I knew didn't seem to know much about it. So that sort of gave me a peg to begin to sort of think about writing about Japan, which I'd always wanted to do, but I had never really known what I wanted to write about. So.
Right, and you're looking at this from American and Japanese characters.
Right, I try to take a sort of bird's eye view to sort of study the war from a more dimensional perspective rather than looking at it from just one side.
Awesome, well I encourage you all to check that out. And Jennifer is here to help me on the Handsell, and the way that the show works is that people send me lists of books that they've recently enjoyed, and then my guest stars and I try to come up with titles that they might enjoy next. And I have a list today that came to us anonymously via Tumblr. And the books on that list include Ruth Ozeki's My Year of Meats, The Red Tent by Anita Diamant, and Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. It's a pretty eclectic list, but it does have some commonalities to it. And so I'm really interested to see what you came up with for that.
Yeah, I had to do some thinking on that one. Obviously, the one thing that they have in common is very strong female characters. And so I sort of went with that as sort of the unifying factor. But then I sort of just found different books that I thought worked with sort of the overall feeling of each of those. The first one, this was a sort of surprise to me last year, but I really loved it. It was Witness the Night by an author named Kirshwa Desai. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. It won the Costa First Novel Award. It's a Penguin book. And I liked it because it sort of felt a little bit like the gritty sort of mystery thriller aspect of Ruth Ozeki's Year of Meats. It has a really unusual Indian detective at its center. It's a woman who's sort of a heavy drinking, smoking, kind of gritty, almost like Humphrey Bogart type, who's chasing sort of sexual inequality and sort of crimes against women. And yet it's also a very small town story as well, which I think is a bit like Ruth Ozeki's book as well. For The Handmaid's Tale, the first one that came to mind was Hilary Jordan's When She Woke, which is also a sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian allegory, which is sort of roughly based on The Scarlet Letter, and has a lot of really sort of interesting sort of feminist theory woven into it, and a very, very compelling story. And then the last one, I really had some trouble with The Red Tent, which I loved, but I couldn't think of any other sort of biblically oriented historical novels. So what I came up with was The German Bride by Joanna Hirschhorn.
Oh, that's a great book.
Really, really lovely historical novel that has a Jewish woman at its heart. It's about a young German Jewish woman who in the 1800s marries a German Jewish merchant who goes to Santa Fe and the Wild West and starts up a life there. And so it's this young, privileged German Jewish woman who goes and essentially has to sort of learn to live like a cowboy. But it's a really beautiful and very, very compelling book. So.
Fantastic. Great. Well, those are some great sounding titles, and the book that I came up with for this person to read next is a novel that a friend of mine just put out recently. Her name is Jeanine Cummins, and the book is called The Crooked Branch, and it's a story that is split into two parts. There's a modern setting with a woman in New York who's just had a child, and she's kind of dealing with the stress of that. And as she's dealing with that, she learns a little bit about her family history, and so the second half of the novel is set in Ireland during the potato famine, and it recounts the things that are going on in this family's life during that crisis. And I say half of the novel, but really it bounces back and forth between the two stories and intersects those two narratives in interesting ways. And it's a very powerful, emotional story that I think people who resonated with the emotional narratives in books like The Red Tent and My Year of Meats, and even that core drama that is there underneath the science fictional aspects of Margaret Atwood's novel, I think that people will really love The Crooked Branch if they give it a try. So I encourage you to find it and to read it. So there are 4 great titles for this person to read next, and hopefully for many of you to start reading as well. And if you would like me to make a recommendation for you on the Handsell, all you have to do is go to thehandsell.com/ask and email me about 3 to 5 titles that you've enjoyed, and then I will recruit an author or perhaps an independent bookseller, and we'll see what we can recommend for you to read next. In the meantime, from Word in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, I'm Ron Hogan with Jennifer Cody Epstein and The Gods of Heavenly Punishment, which you should also run out and find. And we thank you for watching.